So you want to know how to set goals in 2020 that you're actually going to achieve. Well, we're going deep into goal setting in this series, and today especially, we're going to uncover and reveal one of the biggest goal sabotages in your life right now. You may or may not know about it, but it is absolutely critical if you're wanting to make changes this year or achieve something different than you did last year. We're also going to dive into a bunch of great questions and feedback that's come through overnight. All that and more coming up right after this. Hey guys, welcome to the show. In case we haven't met, my name is Yanni Bormeister. I am one of the co-founders of Unity Gym here and the UMS system. Now, before we get started, part of the reason why we get exceptional results in our UMS program is because we have an incredible system that unifies strength, flexibility, and cardio fitness. If you want to know the secrets to that program, you can download our blueprint, which is linked in the description. Now, I'm joined again with none other than Dr. Phil White, aka our resident physiotherapist, and we are going deep into psychology this week, and I'm very excited because that's going to lead into a topic that I've wanted to cover for a while, and I know Phil's chomping at the bit for, which is pain psychology.
Yeah. It's a really big one, and I think as we've talked about the last few days, you can spend so much of your life training, and if you're not kind of heading in the right direction because you haven't actually thought about which direction you want to go, then you can waste a lot of time. And with that pain psychology stuff, it seems like there's a bit of interest in it, and so pain science is going to be the topic coming up after this. So excited and ready to go.
Absolutely right. And hey, since we did this sort of little goal setting video, or Rad and Phil did while I was in Europe a couple of weeks ago, there's been a lot of interest, and I've received a lot of personal emails. So thank you very much for everyone who's emailed me personally. We're getting a lot of great comments that are coming through. This is really, really hitting home for a bunch of our audience. So for those of you who are getting something from this, smash the like button. And I want to know, where your head's at. Phil asked the question yesterday, do you believe in this stuff? Like, is it something that you've thought about before? Is it something that you just
challenge your idea of what how you see yourself and what you think works? So really keen. There's a few people who commented saying that it is quite a challenging idea for them, and it's really good to get that discussion going. Yeah. Just on the topic of smashing that like button, I was going back and getting some topics and comments from like previous videos, and I've noticed that almost every time it's 1 in 10 people who've watched the stream will hit the like button. It's always just like 10%. So let's try and make this video.
Yeah.
See if you're 9 out of 10 people.
11%.
Yeah. Huge.
Anything would be an improvement. Yeah. It's not a lot of effort, guys.
Yeah,
not a lot of effort. But it helps us a lot.
It just makes a big difference to us, and we love doing this, but it really helps.
Especially when we're only talking to a small audience here, and it kind of can feel like you're talking to yourself. And then you go back and watch you have a look at the statistics afterwards, and you see, oh wow, a few hundred people have watched, 1,000 people have watched, and 10 have hit the like button. You're like, come on, surely more than a 10 people out of that 1,000 saw value in the content. Anyway,
there we go.
Let's move on. Today is a huge topic. Now, just to quickly recap, yesterday we spoke about, in the psychology component of this, remember 3 components: psychology, planning, and execution. We're going to do planning and execution next week. Yesterday and today we've dived into psychology. Yesterday was about thoughts and where your thoughts come from, and we created the colloquial term of all the thoughts and the programs and the systems in your brain that are helping to decide how you behave as your story, and that we sort of, I guess, dip the toe in the concept that you can actually rewrite your story, which helps to change the way you think and helps to remodel your thoughts so that maybe they are more suited or more supportive of your goals.
Yeah, but hopefully before you do rewrite your story, you do what we talked about yesterday, which is actually writing down your current story and what's got you to this point. Because I think being that sort of radically honest with yourself about, what are the big factors that have influenced you over time is such a powerful part of changing it. It's really easy to say like, oh, I'm going to be this person aspirationally moving forward. But if you do that without actually looking back at what's kind of got you to here. It's quite a
That's exactly right, because you don't know. As I said yesterday, all of this and the plan and the program is going to become your roadmap to success. But no map is worth anything if you don't know where you're starting from. And part of the key benefit to actually writing down your story, focusing specifically on the areas of your life that you think are broken or you're dissatisfied with, and then to go deeper, really emphasizing in what you write down the things that you can remember or identify of influence to those areas of your life. And I gave some examples yesterday of my personal life. Now, that is so important, because you can't, you don't know how to fix something, or if you don't even know what to fix,
Yeah. And taking that bird's eye view where you really sit back and you think about all these factors that have influenced you means that you can start to control your own story, because then as you're going forward, you start to see those influences from a sort of different view, where you can see maybe this is starting to draw me in this direction or in that direction, but you can start to gain control of the factors that are pulling you in certain directions, rather than just going along for the ride and getting sucked into it. So having that sort of ability by writing down what's got you to this point, it gives you that sort of 10,000 foot view, and you can see all those factors that are playing into it.
Absolutely. Okay, so there's one thing that is going to potentially make this entire concept really, really difficult for a lot of people to grasp and to potentially even believe in the first place. And that is your ego. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So let me start with giving you a little bit of a background as to why we evolved to have what we refer to as an ego now. This all comes about because human beings are herd. We're mammals, and like all mammals, we're herd animals. That means that the reason why we are who we are, and why we're sort of evolving to be at the top of the food chain, is because we were able to band together into large herds and overcome obstacles and challenges. You can go back hundreds and hundreds of thousands, millions of years, and this is the case.
Just to point on that, I was one of those kids that didn't play with guns growing up. I had picture books of animals. Just going to challenge you on that idea that all mammals were herd animals. Your snow leopard isn't going to be hanging out with other snow leopards. But yes, we are a community-based. My inner child was just screaming out there. So had to
the majority of mammals are herd animals. Okay, now human beings especially, and it's as a result we seek. Without the safety and the support of our herd, our community, we pretty much die. We can't survive, and they have big problems with this. Like, for instance, when they send people into space, they can't send one person into space alone, because that person just ends up going crazy. So there's always got to be some form of a tribe or a herd there.
Solitary confinement is, the worst kind of punishment you can get.
That's exactly right. We seek and we need gratification, herd gratification. So we are absolute sticklers for getting praise from people, and that's one of the driving forces behind us. One of the biggest driving forces behind our motivation is to elevate ourselves and our social stature in our herd. As a result of all this social pressure, though, we can act really irrationally to avoid looking bad. We don't like herd scrutiny, we don't like public scrutiny, and we certainly try to avoid public embarrassment. And the result of this is that we've evolved to have an ego that is highly tuned to protect us from those things. And so essentially what happens is your ego is there to protect you from harm, the types of harm that come from embarrassment. What other words am I looking for around social pressure? What's that, Richie? Judgment. Judgment's a big one. Social scrutiny, any sort of criticism. Our ego protects us from those things. And a lot of those sorts of things come about when we fail, when we publicly fail, when we try to do something. And so you could say that your ego is finely tuned to be aware of you exposing yourself to situations where you might fail. And think about that. Let's think about that for a second. anything that you try to do that changes your circumstances, any goal setting, any body composition alteration, to lose weight, to try to go for a new job, anything that makes you uncomfortable because of the element of potential failure, your ego is going to be very present. And this is exactly why a lot of you will find that you're challenged by these concepts, because they might be new to you. They might be just something that your upbringing has never looked into or you've never been exposed to before. Spirituality is a big one for people, like people who have never been exposed to some form of spirituality really find it challenging, and their ego, will really protect that. Another thing that your ego wants to protect are your dogmas and your deep-rooted belief systems that have been brought about by your upbringing. So essentially, on a macro level, your ego is there to protect your current story. And this is what we're going to talk about today. So I think the starting point today, and this is stuff that I've never even discussed with Phil, so this is going to be new to Phil. So we're going to do a little exercise here where we're going to see if we can identify Phil's ego traits and when your ego might be doing the driving instead of you. So the first thing to do, and I've got some notes here because this is old stuff for me. I've not revisited this area of my writing for quite a while, and I'm pulling all this stuff from a book that I'm writing. I said that at the start of this, so you got to excuse when I have to look down at the page. But there's 7 signs or symptoms of ego, and we'll go through them, and I'll give you a couple of examples here because I've written examples that kind of relate to what we're in our industry and what we're talking about. The 7 signs of ego are deflection or deflecting, defending, distorting, blaming, justifying, comparing, and demonstrating. So let's look at some examples here. Deflecting. People are starving. In the scheme of things, this isn't a problem. So if I challenge you to change something, to do something better, and you say, come on, man, there's people starving in the world. In the grand scheme of things, what I'm doing here isn't really that bad. That's a sign of ego. You're deflecting the issue that we're talking about. Defending. Between work and family, I have no time for my own health. I've heard that a million times before. I'm sure you've heard it in your practice. I got so much on. I don't have time to do these exercises that you've given me,
Yeah.
Distorting. Change is too hard. Every time I think about setting goals, I fail. It's just way too difficult to make changes in my life. It really isn't. And you're distorting the reality,
Yeah. So the distorting there is that, like, really change can be small steps, but you're distorting the reality that change has to be these big things. And you're
exactly right. Blaming. It's the food company's fault I'm unhealthy. They misled me. I've heard that a million times before. And
which is fairly true, I think.
There is, but it's not their fault. You have the power. You still choose to put the food in your mouth. The buck stops with you. Of course, there's always going to be influence, and we talk about this. The media, advertising, everything is influencing us. But how we choose to be influenced by it, So blaming is a big sign of ego. Justifying. My priority is career and work, so I have no time for anything else. That's a huge one for me. Growing our gym tribe and doing all this stuff, I'm constantly justifying why I can't exercise or find time to exercise. I'm sure some of you guys can relate to that. Comparing. I might be overweight, but at least I'm not as fat as some people, or at least I'm not as obese as Jim in my office. He's huge, I'm sure we've all sort of compared before. That's another very strong ego trait. And the last one is demonstrating. I've tried this stupid airy-fairy vision and story bullshit before. None of it really works. So those are the 7 symptoms of ego. So what we want to do, and what I challenge Phil to do on air in front of everyone right now, is to have a think about that and think about any of the ego, any symptoms of ego that he recognizes here that he may have come up with, especially recently since being challenged to go out on your own and build your own business.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly a challenging thing just to be put on the spot to figure out.
Right now, he's just used justifying.
Probably.
He's also just defended himself, So his ego's already present, you know.
No, I mean, 100%. Like it obviously, feels fairly confrontational to be that. But then I think, like, it's interesting that you kind of put all these up because it's, obviously how you defend yourself about, like, against anything. But, like, I'm not really.
The thing, the deeper you go on this, and when you become aware of this, which is the first step, it's incredible to analyze your thought process, because the moment someone does something that challenges you, you will experience your ego stepping in and going, fucking hold on, I got this, I'm going to take this. And the problem is that the majority of us don't realize how much we're on autopilot and we're allowing our ego to make the decisions for us. I like to say, I say to people all the time, are you driving or is your ego driving right now?
So I guess to get a bit of an idea of, like, what I'm trying to, like, if it's like ego generally or if it's related to a particular thing such as exercise.
Yep.
Am I looking at it from a particular exercise thing, or am I meant to just say, like,
I'd just say any time that you have experienced, now that you've sort of seen the 7 traits of ego, anything that's obvious that comes up in your life that you go, okay, fuck yeah,
okay.
My
I guess
ego
so at
definitely.
the moment, I hurt my ankle when I was up the coast in Byron over the weekend, and it's a bit sore to walk. And then I've got back and I haven't trained, and I've kind of justified it because I've had a bit of a sore ankle and I've wanted that to rest. And also I've been really, like, excited and busy with work stuff, so I've probably done a bit of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can say now, I've been back in Sydney for 2 weeks, and I haven't exercised once because as soon as I flew back, the next day I got sick. But really, this week, I certainly could have made time to do some flexibility training.
Yeah.
And I probably...
it's a big thing that I always preach to my clients and patients is that there's always something you can be doing that will be furthering you towards your physical goals. So
that's exactly right, and we're big advocates of that. But because Rad's away, he's gone off to have his operation, I've had a lot more work dumped onto my lap and my desk, and I've also got a lot of big things. We got a lot of new people in our tribe here who start out at the start of the year doing our 28-day intensive program. So
which one are you doing here now?
I'm pretty much doing all of them. Yep. Like, I'm defending my situation right now. I'm trying, like, this is my ego defending that. Well, I've got a reason to not exercise because I've got all these new people here and I need to get them sorted. And I've identified holes in our systems that need fixing. And so I've got no time to exercise. I'm justifying my situation. I've in my head I've even compared. Well, Rad's off sick and he's not going to be able to exercise for like 6 weeks, so surely it's okay for me to have a couple of weeks off. That's another ego trait. And this is the thing. My mentor a few years ago, who introduced me to these concepts, he was phenomenal at this, and the guy has gotten more done than anyone I know in the last 2 years. He's turned his personal business into from about a $5 million to about a $20 million business in a couple of years. It's phenomenal how much he's grown. And he's grown from a team of about maybe 5 to 10 people to a full-time team of about 50 people. And when I sit and talk to him, you'll see him go, and he'll stop and think and just wait for a sec and then re-answer you, because he knows that his initial reaction was ego-driven. It was his ego making the answer for him, and he knew that it wouldn't be his true answer, And to have a conversation with someone that's that enlightened and that conscious of their psychology is humbling. It's quite amazing. And I've had conversations with people who I really value. One of my hobbies is investing and finance. And I've had conversations with people that I aspire to. Like, I've just reached out to them and because I've read their book and I love it and that sort of stuff. And I've sent them emails, and I've been surprised to have them respond to me. And when you talk to someone like this, and they've reached billionaire status, it's surprisingly evident that they're aware of this stuff and that they're really, really good at communicating in a way that they've completely shelved their ego.
Yeah. Karina's just got a question there for you about the name of your mentor's business.
That mentor was Kerwin Ray. So his, you can look at him. He's all over social media. Kerwin Ray. I worked with him for a year, and he's an amazing man and a very inspiring guy, and he helped me a lot.
So yeah, just I guess when you've just kind of explained these a bit further, it reminds me of one thing that really I found quite a useful way of, I guess, getting to a similar sort of place, but a slightly different way, which was when I was following some of Ray Dalio's works.
Ray Dalio is one of the investors that I've reached out to and interacted with. He's a fucking phenomenal
Yeah, so
man.
he's kind of his Principles, which is a free book that he's got on the internet, is just a wonderful way of kind of talking about the way that he's structured his life and his business. And radical transparency is a big thing that they promote in their business, where instead of like cloak and daggers and keeping things under secret from each other, they just get everything out there and people just work on a very sort of radically truthful sort of thing. And in that, talking about like, I guess, just the when you're looking at things, really try and see it for just its most pure like truth.
Yeah.
Which for me, an example in my business at the moment is that I guess I find the financial side of the business really quite challenging to get excited about that, because I love working with patients. I love thinking about the body and how I can build my business in the sort of patient side of things. But the hard true reality is that there's financial sort of things that I need to get organized, and if I don't organize them, then it'll come back to bite me in the butt later. And if I can use all of these kind of deflecting, and I can justify being like, oh, I'm working on, other more important stuff, and I'm working with patients and blah, 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 blah. But there's still this just like harsh truth, which is like an ongoing march that, if I don't deal with this, then it will really be a problem later on. Yeah. So it kind of doesn't matter, like all of, if I can, blame and justify and deflect and all these things, and none of that will change the hard truth that, if I don't deal with it, then it's going to cause problems. So
yeah, absolutely. And finance is a really, really good example that I'd like to use too, because I have if you go back a decade even, I had a terrible financial blueprint, and my whole family did, and it was something that we had just seemed to pass down from generation to generation. And if you go far enough back, since I have gone down this path, it's challenged me to really find the root cause of my family's financial woes. And what I found was, when I went far enough back, that it had to do with my father migrating from Germany, and his family was, if you go enough generations back, Baumeister was a very, very famous brewery, a beer and whiskey brand. And our family had a dozen huge breweries in Germany. And it was all lost in the Second World War. It was all bombed, and they went from being aristocratic, very wealthy family to absolutely poor and on food stamps pretty much overnight, within a number of weeks. And then as a result of that, his parents were very negative around money, because it was their parents that had the breweries. And money became the root of all evil, basically. It was a vicious cycle that our family went in that just really didn't look at being wealthy as a good thing, because we were, I guess the family felt robbed of their wealth. And that then just started this domino effect through generation to generation of mismanagement of money. And now money is a hobby of mine, and investing my money has become something that I really truly love. And the majority of the books that I read now and that I'm purchasing are finance books and investing books. Now I hated numbers. I failed at maths. I dropped out of maths in year 10 in high school, never finished it. And I just had this story of being woefully bad at numbers, and therefore woefully bad with money. And now I
have the most intense financial spreadsheet I have ever seen in my life.
Yeah, literally,
Like, it is a thing of beauty.
I'm like full on now, and I manage money very well, and I make a lot of money, and
I think one of the, like, I guess, looking back to how things sort of started to change for you there then, I guess going from that identity and that story of being sort of bad with money to then embrace, because like often when you're changing your story and you're dealing with these kind of truths that are, putting aside your ego, it can be a really uncomfortable, like you get like a visceral reaction. Man, like it really is.
Big time. Ego is something that you will forever be battling with. No amount of spiritual enlightenment will ever prevent ego from surfacing at all. And here's the catch: the more successful you become, the bigger your ego. because you'll start to then, your ego will be fueled by your success with things. Even, it starts out with setting a few little goals, and then, and my business partners and friends, Richard and Rad and Phil even has witnessed this before, when we have crucial conversations in our planning sessions, and whenever anything's challenged or I disagree with what one of the other partners are doing, my ego is ferocious. It comes out, and I often have to go back and apologize to the guys. I'm still not yet at the point where I can stop the ego whilst it's happening. I'll often sit down after an exchange and go, shit, that was real ego driving that conversation. It wasn't really how I feel, and I'll have to go back and apologize. And I find that with my children a lot. When my children challenge me, my ego will just go rah, and slam something down. A big ego, a big evident ego. Recently for all of us was when the Game Changers documentary came out, and every single one of our clients was coming up saying, oh my God, I saw this brilliant documentary called The Game Changers and I'm going to go vegan, and immediately our egos are like, fuck, it's the worst thing in the world, and da-da-da. We had a million reasons to say that, and we still do feel that it was a horrible misleading documentary that falsified a lot of the science behind it. But the way we challenged it with our clients and members was certainly not the best way to approach it, and it wasn't the best coaching. We should have been a lot more neutral and a lot less egotistical about it. Yeah,
and I think it's like you can look around the world and just see how polarized people are becoming about every issue, and how bipartisan politics is, and all of these things. A lot of it does come down to these kind of core factors of becoming being so wrapped up in your own identity that you can't see the other person. So yeah, I think that's a really interesting,
right.
which we've kind of strayed pretty far from the topic of physical goals, but I think you can see how it's this powerful force that's driving a lot of the all the decisions we make. So Karina's got a question there.
Would shoulds be ego driven? Example, things should be a particular way, or I should be able to do or be this. Well, Karina, that's a really good question. That what you're framing up there sounds a lot like your story and your beliefs and your dogmas, which is definitely going to be protected. The shoulds, things should be this way, is going to be based on your story, based on your brain's program and your way of thinking. But your ego will protect it. Your ego will be driving home that it's right, and it'll be trying to entitle you and make you feel like what you're thinking or believing or saying is well warranted. You know?
I think it comes down to there is the fundamental truth of what's happening, and then there's a kind of you look at that through a filter of all of your own biases and your own story, and then you see something slightly offset from the actual fundamental truth. And if you kind of strip all that filter away, then you kind of see that truth, and maybe it shouldn't be like that. Maybe I didn't. So an example of this is just with injuries. I see it really commonly. People get really frustrated when they're playing sports and they get injured, and they're like, oh well, I should. I don't understand why I'm getting sore. I should be totally fine. I've played this sport forever. And then, I've always been fast, quick, never had injuries. Maybe I shouldn't have any issues. And then you kind of drill down to okay, let's talk about your training for the last year. Did you have times where you've, massively changed what you're doing? Have you has your recovery been right? Blah, 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 blah. And then when you drill down to it and you see all those factors that are going to be influencing that underlying truth, it doesn't always match up to maybe what their ego told them that they're actually doing,
Yeah, that's exactly right. Look, this happens to us. Karina, you're absolutely right. So it's about defending, and defending is a huge, it's the second ego trait on my list, and I've listed them in order of what I see most commonly. She's always said, I'm really trying to challenge my filters. I get this all the time. When we have people who come in who are a good example that aligns with what Phil's saying is they've got an injury that they've had for a long time. And, the reality is that they have to regress what they're doing to a level where they can give that area of the body the right enough of the right stimulus to then be able to slowly progress back to where they want to be. But they just come up with every excuse in the book as to why they don't want to do that. And the reality is there is no excuse that validates that, because they're going to just continue. They come and they complain and they want you to wave a magic wand and fix that problem, without them changing anything that they're doing in their life, you know. And the very thing that they need to do is just shelve their ego and go, okay, none of the justification, none of the defending, none of the blaming, none of the distorting, none of the comparing or demonstrating is going to fix this injury. I just need to listen to what this guy's saying, shelve my ego, and get on with fixing this issue. But they don't, and a lot of people never do, because they're incapable of understanding that there's an ego present, and that the ego is actually driving most of the time right now, and their awareness is taking a back seat.
Yeah, and I think it's also something to be aware of when you are seeing a health professional, and sometimes you can really see that, like, a health professional's ego about, like, you know, they are, you know, for myself as a past massage therapist, my only tool was to, you know, have massage as the way of treating, and, you know, if they're a dry needling person, and, you know, if their kind of way of doing things isn't working, and if they're just telling you to come back for more or blaming you for doing it, when really maybe there's a underlying truth that this particular injury needs something different to what you're able to offer. I think it's just really an interesting thing to be able to try and, like, start to use this, like having your own filters, but then being aware of what other filters people are seeing you through, and being able to, you know, like not necessarily blame them for doing that, but just have that kind of savviness around, you know, maybe the forces that are, you know, influencing the way that they're treating you. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to spend the last 5 minutes or so just making this a bit practical, and then give you a little bit of an exercise to do. How this affects what we're talking about here on topic goal setting, and this affects everything, every interaction you have with another person, every possibility you have to level up by learning something new. Everything is challenged by your ego, and very few people that I've met are able to shelve their ego throughout their entire life and just get through life making the most of every opportunity. It's very, very rare. And the more successful one person becomes, the more challenging their ego. So, you know, to give you an example of how this might be affecting you, you may be defending your current situation. You might be justifying your current situation, and that justification is preventing you from making the choices or changes that need to happen to achieve your goals. A very good example is that justification or defense. If you're, you know, struggling to achieve the health that you want, you might be blaming your circumstances. You might be blaming your work environment. I'm working too hard and I just don't have time to get to the gym. You know, the reality is that every single person in the world has the same 24 hours every day. It's just that some people learn to use those hours more effectively to suit their goals, and it's the ego and the justification and the defending and the deflecting that is preventing the people who aren't from doing so. You know, so that's a really, really big one that I challenge you to think about. And so my challenge to everyone who watches this stream is that if you are planning to make some new goals this year, and if you're the type of person who crushes their goals every year, and you might be sitting back thinking, well, I've got no problem because I achieved every one of my goals last year, then my challenge to you is to make some bigger, more hairy and audacious goals. Because if you find that you're achieving every one of your goals every year, then you're not shooting high enough. To everyone else who's not achieving their goals every year, then I challenge you to not only have a look at your story and have a look at the programming that's on repeat that may be sort of creating habit loops that prevent you from moving forward from where you are right now. I challenge you to go even deeper and look at the reason why those things are still in place. Because I think you'll find that you are that you'll find symptoms of ego, which are deflecting, defending, distorting, blaming, justifying, comparing, and demonstrating. Really go deep. And as a result, maybe write down a few of the ego traits that you identify that surface for you on a regular basis so that you can become more aware when they're present.
I think that's a really nice way to start wrapping things up. But I was just having a bit of a think about, like, kind of devil's advocate and where ego can be pretty useful, I guess, in that, you know, I think, like, I'm a I sort of see myself in general life being pretty easygoing, but then as soon as I start playing sport and as soon as I have sort of athletic kind of competition against anyone else, I think there's a really large part of my ego that drives that performance.
Absolutely.
So like, it's, when I'm running and, doing a Olympic distance triathlon last year, and it was like bloody painful, but the thing that kept me going was like sort of, my ego and getting, beating other people.
Yep.
And so I think it's all well and good to kind of, I think it's really useful to be aware of how these sort of ego factors are, maybe causing some negative parts of, your life. But I think it's also important to see when having that sort of more objective view and understanding the things that do control you. So now when I use that as a bit of a tool for when I do want to train harder or whatever, I'll do it with other people, or I'll enter races so that I do push myself. Like, I think it's useful to understand how.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm going to cut you off because I agree. And most of the world's most successful people have an ego the size of a freight train. So there is certainly benefit to having an ego, but the majority of the people that I've met in that case have learnt to control the ego to a degree. They know when it's of service to them. And this goes for your story too, guys. There's many elements of your story that are serving you that you don't want to rewrite and get rid of, But what this is about, setting goals and reverse engineering them and creating an action plan and really executing on that, what it's about is identifying those key areas that are serving you and those areas that are not serving you so well. And we're only rewriting or getting rid of the areas that are not serving you. The stuff that's serving you well, for God's sake, you want that front and center,
100%.
Cool?
Really like that. Just before we go, I just want to do a bit of a shout out to Graham Ricketts. We've had some really good comments from a lot of people, but just really highlight Graham here. He says, ... I'm going to give it a go. Although it scares me a bit. I guess I'm used to who I am right now. Don't really think I need to change to attain my goals, but just try harder at least, or the latest shiny things. Wow, seems really obvious. I rarely blame myself for not attaining my goals. There's always a reason. But it's not me. Lol. Thank you for sharing your part of the story. How is Rad going, by the way? Sitting on a donut.
Sitting on a donut. So I identified probably 4 or 5 out of the 7 ego traits in that one comment. There was a lot of comparing. There was a lot of justification. There was a lot of defending. And there was even a little bit of deflecting. Yeah. And the whole comment was demonstration. He was demonstrating how he is okay right now. And he, so...
But what I love about it is he says, he says, I'm going to give it a go, although it scares me a bit about writing his story and becoming aware of all these things. So I think it's really wonderful that it's challenging you, but you're giving it a go. And I really encourage other people to...
He's basically, and good on you, Graham, for you've basically scripted your ego going through this battle of am I going to let this happen, like that. And that's brilliant. This is what it's all about. It's all about. And now if you watch today's episode and read today's blog that I'm writing about this episode, which he will receive, because he's a subscriber to our Inner Circle, he's going to go, holy shit, hopefully he'll identify that there's a lot of ego going on there. His ego's really surfacing, and his awareness and his sort of the other part of his brains are really trying to go, no, I want to give this
hopefully this has given you a bit of an insight on how you can use it to control
Absolutely.
Control things for good.
Absolutely. Look, the cool thing about this is that what you do, you get to a level where you identify ego, and then you go, okay, cool, I'm going to do this, because if my ego is coming up and challenging me, then there's obviously room for growth on the other side of this, Yeah. And that's a really, really cool place to be.
Awesome.
Guys, write down any of the ego traits that you resonate with. Write down if you think that this is just total bullshit and we're really weird people.
Yep.
We want to know that too.
Love that.
And let's
try and get more than 10% likes. That'd be really cool. And again, that's not just coming from an ego thing of us saying like, oh, we feel better when we get more likes. It just really helps us share the message to get more people listening and get more people involved. So
yeah, that's right. Now, guys, huge show coming Monday. We're talking about emotion. So we're going to take this the last step, and we're going to talk about some ways of disassociating from the things that are coming up for you, because ego brings up a lot of emotion, and the emotions are real. They're real chemical reactions occurring within the body, and you need to understand how to disassociate from them so they do not become fused to your character and your
really keen for this one and my visceral feeling of doing my finances. So it's going to be good.
Yeah, there you go. Absolutely, guys. See you on Monday. It's the weekend for us here in Sydney, Australia. For everyone in the US sucked in, you've got another day of work. We will see you on Monday. Take care. Health is about performance, not just body image.
You better be willing to accept what you're going to have to do to get there.
We'll start focusing on movement goals, strength goals, flexibility goals.
When you nail that skill, that's there forever.
The body image goal doesn't get you that far.
It's the consistency and frequency that's going to get you there. It's not the intensity.
There's no shortcuts to mastery and movement. Destination doesn't change overnight, but your direction will.
The gym is not the place to beat up the body that you hate. It's the place to build the body that you love.
We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.